Metallica are one of the biggest and most influential bands in history, which is kind of amazing when you consider how extreme, progressive, and defiantly uncommercial their early music was. Over the course of just 4 years in the mid-80s, the band released a trilogy of increasingly ambitious albums with Danish producer Flemming Rasmussen: Ride the Lightning, Master of Puppets, and Justice for All, each of them a refinement of a shared blueprint. Together they expanded heavy metal's sonic palette, blending aggression with progressive structures, classical influences, and weighty social themes. While their peers chased radio play, polished videos, and glossy images, Metallica forged a grassroots movement, spreading largely by word of mouth.
We're doing it our way, and a lot of the major magazines are picking it up and, not, putting a bunch of hype.
It is actually possible to do this without airplay, without videos.
And although they later embraced radio and MTV, it was the Flemming Trilogy that laid the foundation of their legacy. Music still revered for its authenticity, ambition, and power.
What's your favourite Metallica album?
Ride the Lightning.
Master of Puppets.
And Justice for All.
Ride the Lightning.
Master of Puppets.
And Justice for All.
Ride the Lightning.
Master of Puppets. Justice for All.
I think they're three of the greatest albums ever recorded, and I'm going to spend the next 50 minutes going deep into how they were made and how they've endured.
We're heading towards Copenhagen, Denmark. We're recording Ride the Lightning, which is the second album, at Sweet Silence Studio, where some early Merciful Fate demos have been recorded. The two latest Rainbow albums have been recorded there. It's a real good sound, real good house engineer. And it's gonna sound, more ballsy than Kill 'Em All. It's gonna have, more rougher, because Kill 'Em All was a bit too polished.
Released just 7 months earlier, Metallica's debut album, Kill 'Em All, was recorded in Rochester, New York, and released on the fledgling New York-based independent label, Megaforce Records. The band's founders, guitarist and vocalist James Hetfield and drummer Lars Ulrich, were both just 19 years old. Lead guitarist Kirk Hammett was 20, while bassist Cliff Burton was the granddaddy of the group at age 21. The album, a tight, thrashy blend of new wave of British heavy metal and punk influences, became an underground success as the band hit the road in the US with Raven on the Kill 'Em All for One tour. Copies of Kill 'Em All were selling faster than Megaforce could press them, and with Metallica eyeing the European market, a deal was struck between Megaforce and UK independent label Music for Nations. This saw album sales of their debut climb to 60,000 worldwide by February 1984, and landed Metallica a support slot on Venom's 7 Dates of Hell European tour, during which Metallica showcased newly written material.
This is a new one right here from the forthcoming album, entitled Ride the Lightning!
With Music for Nations advancing the band's recording budget, Metallica decided to record Ride the Lightning while they were in Europe. A favourable exchange rate enabled them to buy 3 weeks at Sweet Silence Studios, where Rainbow's Difficult to Cure was recorded, and sweetening the deal even further, the studio came with its founder, Flemming Rasmussen, as in-house engineer.
I had no idea that there was a band that existed that was called Metallica. I obviously heard it when they called me and asked if I was interested. And I immediately said yes, because it was, my kind of alley with, the hard rock thing. But, I didn't know Lars, I didn't know the band, I didn't know anything about it at all.
It was like these 4 kids that had known each other for a long time, that kind of, it's us against the world, and they were all, fighting the Metallica fight. We need to make Metallica the best thing ever.
Easing the financial burden even further, Flemming allowed the band to sleep in the studio during the day, while other commercial clients paid for recording time.
We slept up in the tape room upstairs. I remember sleeping on the floor, looking through all these tapes. There was Rainbow had recorded there.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I mean, we got him to pull up some old Rainbow 2 inches, and he put them on there, and we soloed Richie's tracks. Wow.
That was awesome.
Very cool.
Cliff struggled the most with the European lifestyle. According to his friend and former bandmate Jim Martin, he'd talk about being someplace in Europe and missing, say, breakfast. You miss breakfast in Europe? That's it. Places don't stay open like they do in the States. They have Denny's in the States. It's open 24 hours. You can go and get food anytime. You f*** up in Europe, and all of a sudden you have to eat cucumber f***ing mayonnaise sandwiches. What kind of bullshit is that? But Lars's local connections kept them on track. He introduced them to the best beer, best food, and even to Merciful Fate, whose rehearsal studio, located nearby Sweet Silence, was used by Metallica to finish writing the songs ahead of recording. Meanwhile, Rasmussen was getting to know his new live-in clients. He was impressed by their raw passion and attitude, but also came to the realization that he had work to do, particularly with the drummer.
And I think he never gave it much thought that, what happens between the fills, you have to be steady and there have to be an equal length between the kick and the snare and all this stuff. So yeah, me and Jake, his drum roadie at the time, we kind of, told him, then you go boom, boom, took his leg and when you do this and then you do this with the snare. And I don't think he ever thought about that. He just thought about putting energy into the songs.
I didn't want to sit for 5 years and get lessons and learn all that. I was so interested in just playing songs and playing with guitar players and so forth, that as soon as I could count to 4, I started looking for other people to get a band together with. And I don't necessarily recommend that to other people, but it was I was just so interested in playing in a band that I just sort of jumped over all the sort of beginning learning things and just went straight into playing with other people.
Yeah, he was not the world's best drummer, but for Metallica he is. Lars gets way too little credit for his creative inputs on Metallica. There would be absolutely no Metallica without Lars and his creativity.
Cliff Burton brought a heavily individualistic bass style and approach to Metallica, and was an equal contributor of musical ideas, even bringing some of his older ones.
He was a crazy bass player, actually, because he didn't like headphones. I actually hooked up a pair of speakers and stuck his bass amp in another room. And he could, run around and play his bass to the sound on the speakers. So it's just like playing live. And that's the way we got the best performances. And he did some pretty crazy stuff. He was innovative in a way that no other bass players was at that time.
It takes a bit to, learn how to manipulate various effects, especially on a bass, because a lot of people think of bass as being right back there with the drums, just going thump, 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 not really adventuring off into the wild blue yonder, right, f***ing everybody up.
Cliff also introduced the band to harmonies and would obsessively harmonize over any melody.
He was genius at harmonies and layering and phrasings, very classical sounding, not your typical rock stuff at all.
According to Kirk Hammett, he was just a living, breathing harmonizer. There was no way you could avoid that rubbing off on you. Cliff's harmonies even rubbed off on Lars, and he's a f***ing drummer.
Cliff Burton shows up and starts talking about, the Eagles or Simon & Garfunkel or Jethro Tull or the Misfits or all this, lots of different stuff. And so Ride the Lightning was we went broader and broader in our scope.
One aspect of the band that particularly excited Flemming was the rhythm guitar work of James Hetfield. He would go on to describe James' playing as extremely exact, the best rhythm guitar player in the world. He'll do 8 tracks, and it sounds like one.
On all the albums I've done with Metallica, the only one playing rhythm guitar is James Hetfield. Why is that so? Doesn't Kirk play a good rhythm guitar? Yes, he does. But he's not nearly as good as James Hetfield, so when you have a James Hetfield in the band, you obviously use him to record.
Having lost his cherished Marshall head and cabinets when the band's equipment truck was stolen shortly before leaving for Europe, James tried practically every Marshall in Denmark, including Merciful Fate's gear, before settling on a Marshall JMP 2203 found at a hole-in-the-wall music shop in Copenhagen. He used his white Flying V throughout the album, not actually a Gibson, but an Epiphone with a Gibson plate screwed on the headstock. James had found the guitar tone he was looking for, but he was less confident as a vocalist.
I don't know how to live through this hell. Woken up, I'm still locked in the shell.
I listen back to those vocals and go, who is that?
Yeah.
You know, who is that? Who is she? I mean, some of his high screaming stuff. It's like, wow.
He was pretty shy. He didn't really consider himself a singer. He was more like shouting. So you know, just getting him to do the vocals was in the beginning pretty hard, but he obviously got more better and better at it.
The band were even considering bringing in a new singer to allow James to focus solely on his guitar playing.
You really looking for a vocalist? Well, let's put it this way: we, open to offers.
An offer was actually made to Armoured Saint vocalist John Bush, but he declined. He's since been magnanimous about his decision in interviews. It was just never meant to be my destiny. There's no other singer that should have been the singer for Metallica other than James Hetfield. Meanwhile, lead guitarist Kirk Hammett was bringing his own set of influences and musical ideas to the table, something he didn't have the opportunity to do on Kill 'Em All, having only joined the band weeks before recording their debut. He also contributed songwriting ideas, including riffs from his former band, Exodus.
Die. I wrote it when I was 16 years old and it's still with us to this day.
Kirk was taking guitar lessons at the time from Joe Satriani, who had this to say about his student. Kirk would come in and say, "Check out this new song I have to do a solo over. What key is this in?" Often the song wasn't just in one key. I had to teach him to decipher the song's tonality, to understand the musical possibilities, and how to make his own decisions on what to play. But traces of Metallica's former guitarist, Dave Mustaine, still ran through the new material. Before his departure, Mustaine had co-written several songs that would resurface on Ride the Lightning.
Ride the Lightning I wrote, Call of Cthulhu I wrote.
Mustaine's riffs and ideas remained part of the band's DNA, even as Hammett added his own distinct style and solos. The band, along with Flemming, worked tirelessly for 3 weeks, putting together an album that would become the archetype of a trilogy of albums that would define Metallica and redefine metal. Side 1 opens with a Baroque-inspired piece written by Cliff. According to Kirk, Cliff would play this piece constantly. Layered with multiple 12-string acoustic overdubs, it opens the album before morphing into possibly the thrashiest, most brutal song they had produced up to that point, if not ever. Fight Fire with Fire set the bar for opening tracks on Metallica albums, and amidst the intensity, the clear influence of Cliff's obsession with harmony. This is followed by an epic title track, a mid-tempo banger, and a ballad. Fade to Black was a first, a song that introduced melancholy, introspection, and vulnerability to Metallica's arsenal. Closing side 1, it became the emotional counterweight to their aggression. It also established a formula that they'd carry on through the next 2 albums, closing the first side of each with a sensitive ballad, building into an epic climax. According to Lars, that kind of song was always in the background for us. We knew in our hearts that was part of the Metallica sound, but we just didn't have the skill or finesse to tackle it on Kill 'Em All. By the time Cliff and Kirk came on board, we felt we had the ability to go down that path. Side 2 opens with another riff of Kirk's, borrowed from his old band. Followed by, well, a straight-up attempt to write a catchy single.
That was kind of their giveaway to get a major label deal, so that if eventually they could have a single. It's never been released as a single, I think, but that was kind of what they thought. We'll do this shorter song, which has like a singable riff to it, which was more like what everybody else was doing in the 80s.
Escape, I hate that song.
So let it be written. So let it be done.
And rounding things off, one of Metallica's greatest anthems, and an epic 9-minute instrumental. And with that, the blueprint was set. 8 tracks, packaged together as Ride the Lightning, a title Kirk lifted from a line in a novel he was reading, Stephen King's The Stand, with a blue cover depicting an empty electric chair suspended in bolts of lightning. The dark imagery reflected the record's central obsession, mortality. The spectre of death loomed over every track. Ride the Lightning was released on July 27, 1984. Kerrang called it nothing short of breathtaking in its 5K review. Sounds wrote that Metallica simply strive forward with undeniable strength and skill. For a lot of people, this is their favourite Metallica album, and there's good reason for that. I mean, look at the track listing. For Whom the Bell Tolls, Fade to Black, Creeping Death, all-time classics, probably played at every Metallica show. Then you've got great epics like Ride the Lightning and The Call of Cthulhu. Yeah, there's a couple of slightly subpar tracks, but overall this is amazing. I can't believe they made this in 3 weeks while sleeping on the studio floor. An absolute metal classic. It also marked a giant leap forward professionally, with Metallica signing to major label Elektra Records, part of the WEA conglomerate that also included Atlantic and Warner Brothers, and securing new management under Q Prime, whose roster already featured Def Leppard. With Ride the Lightning, Metallica had bridged the gap between the underground and the mainstream. They were poised for success, and would insist on doing so on their own terms.
Cliff Bernstein is one of the most respected managers in America because of Def Leppard, biggest band and all this. And also he has Dokken on Elektra, which is the same label. So he has very good insight into the company, and they know, the record company, that when he says don't get involved with the songs or the recording or the production, then they know him enough to sort of say, we won't.
They know, they're business people, and they can see that what we're doing is happening, right? I mean, the records are selling, and the people like it.
By spring 1985, Metallica were finally back in San Francisco after relentless touring across Europe and North America. Returning like conquering heroes, they settled back into their house on Carlson Boulevard, El Cerrito, the infamous Metallica mansion.
When I think back to that summer when we were writing, the one thing that stands out is the couch and the TV. The guitars were laying around.
The Carlson Metallica mansion had an open door policy for if you liked metal, come on in,
The door was always open.
Always open.
Day and night.
Mansion is a generous word for a 2-bed, 1-bath rental on a main road next to a gas station. But the property did have a garage, which they converted into the band's rehearsal space. This was Metallica's original HQ, where much of Ride the Lightning was written, and where work on songs for the highly anticipated follow-up was now kicking off in earnest. The house is actually still there and was being rented a few years ago by this guy, Drew, who not only kept the spirit of the Metallica mansion alive, but enthusiastically welcomed visitors. Check it out. Here he is giving a guided tour for a fan who just showed up on his doorstep.
We put our couch in the same spot where they did the Master of Puppets.
Yeah.
And we put our couch in the same spot. Dude.
Wow, dude, that's fucking awesome.
By the way, from what I can tell, Drew is no longer at this address, so do not turn up to this house expecting to be invited in. While sitting around their living room, writing their next album, the TV was always on, providing a source of inspiration for riffs and lyrics based on whatever was flickering across the screen. World War II films, sleazy televangelists,
Satan will you!
Even Channel 4's end-of-transmission music. Meanwhile, Cliff kept feeding in his own obsessions, classical pieces, and a steady diet of H.P. Lovecraft. As the songs took shape, the band began lining up studios and producers. One name seriously floated was Geddy Lee of Rush.
We're actually very keen on getting him, and he was very keen on working with, he's a very good friend of our management, and he came to our show in Toronto, and we got on with him really well and so forth. And basically what happened was that there was a sort of conflict schedule, as they say in the business.
which meant that he basically couldn't do it because of his commitments with Rush. And we slowly started thinking about that it would be better maybe just to approach it ourselves anyway, like we did last time. And we came to the conclusion that we were very keen on working with Flemming.
Remembering this time, Lars recalls, that was the summer Back to the Future came out, and the main theme was that Huey Lewis song, The Power of Love. That was the biggest hit of the summer. I remember driving around LA with Flemming and James, and every channel you'd turn to, that f***ing thing was on.
We're actually looking at studios in LA to record Master of Puppets, me and Lars. I took like a 2-week trip to find a good studio to record in, because they wanted to do it with me, but they wanted to stay in the States.
Specifically, they wanted a studio with a massive live room that could recreate the natural drum ambience they'd captured at Sweet Silence.
And we didn't really find anything that matched that, so the band decided that, alright, we'll do it in Copenhagen again.
After 5 months of writing and rehearsing, Metallica crisscrossed the Atlantic for a run of career-defining shows. First up, Monsters of Rock at Donington in the UK, where they were sandwiched on the bill between Rat and Bon Jovi.
Well, we're Metallica, and I have to tell you something from the start. If you came here to see spandex and eye makeup and all that and the words rock and roll baby in every song, this ain't the band.
Then back to the States for Day on the Green in Oakland. And once again to Europe for the Metal Hammer Festival in Germany, where they began teasing the new material.
Alright, this is a new one from the album Master of Puppets. Should be out around Christmas time. This one's entitled Disposable Heroes.
With momentum building, the band returned to Copenhagen to begin the next chapter. Back at Sweet Silence, they knew the room and the value of Flemming Rasmussen, now on board officially as co-producer. With Elektra now holding the purse strings, things were different. The band stayed in hotels and had home-cooked meals prepared for them every single night, courtesy of Flemming's wife, Pernille, and paid for by Elektra. Danish meatballs were a favourite.
We started at 6 at my house, and they came at 8. We and my wife made dinner for them. And then we discussed what we needed to do during the night, and we'd walk to the studio from my house, which was like 3 minutes. And once we'd finished recording, it would be 4 or 5, something like that. And they would always make sure they got to the hotel. And the morning buffet opened at 6. They were there at 6 so they could eat breakfast buffet and then go to bed and sleep. So they got up and got to my house to eat dinner.
In 2017, Metallica reunited with their former producer to share some memories.
Master of Puppets, co-producer, engineer.
I actually remember all of that session. I think we all had the same perspective of where we wanted to end.
What's it like for you 30 years later seeing the boys play these songs? And
I get really proud. I think we did a really good job back then.
Metallica now had 4 months of studio time booked, a luxury which enabled them to refine their recording process. Both James and Kirk now added Mesa Boogie amps and Jackson Flying Vs to their arsenals. James' rhythm sound was painstakingly dialed in to a new level of crunch. Takes were now meticulously perfected. James's already precision right hand was given further finesse by employing vari-speed.
Some of the songs on Master of Puppets, we actually recorded them lower and then vari-speeded them up so that it got even tighter.
But this machine-like precision was countered by the Wild Blue Yonder approach of Cliff.
I can remember you complaining about him though, because at the top of the session, he'd have one hand a beer, another hand a pipe, drink a beer, smoke, and you go, I'm ready.
Yeah, I'm loose now. We want it tight, goddammit.
Working off the blueprint established by Ride the Lightning, Master of Puppets opens with a classical music-inspired piece written by James, something he put together late at night on the couch at the Metalli Mansion, whilst hearing that end of transmission music on Bay Area Channel 4, Fouray's Pavane. James recalled, "It was such a great melody. I'd grab an acoustic, play along, and eventually wound up with a chord progression that got me thinking, what would be the ultimate intro? I wanted something with a lot of build that would raise your hair up and give you goosebumps, like an approaching storm. Something's coming. You can feel it. It starts off soft and quiet, then boom." This is followed by an epic title track. Spanning 8.5 minutes, Master of Puppets draws as much, if not more, from progressive and classic rock as it does from thrash. Speaking about Cliff, Lars said he was really into a lot of kind of progressive stuff like Yes and Peter Gabriel, and a lot of prog rock, and he was a hardcore Rush fanatic. Amid all the movements and odd time signature changes, there's even a nod to David Bowie. Lyrically, Master of Puppets represents another step up for the band, with themes of addiction and manipulation. Side 1 continues with a mid-tempo banger, and rounds off with a ballad. Whilst embracing the job of being the band's singer, James was still unsure of his abilities as a vocalist.
There's like a really high part. Really high. It's like, I can't sing that. And you're like, well, James, you knew this was coming. What are you going to do about it?
Just leave me alone!
Side 2 opens with another epic, dealing with the topic of soldiers used as cannon fodder in war, a continuation of a theme established with For Whom the Bell Tolls on the previous album, and that would continue on the following album, with One. Metallica shied away from making political statements during this period, but their return to this subject, always from the point of view of a soldier, wondering what it is he's fighting and dying for, fits squarely into the tradition of anti-war songs like War Pigs and Fortunate Son. The subject then changes to televangelism.
And I wrote a bunch of Leper Messiah too. They didn't give me credit on that.
Then perhaps the emotional centerpiece of the album, the 8-minute instrumental Orion, built around a midsection composed by Cliff Burton.
He played me a rough version of it one time in the hotel room, but it was just the progression. Boom, 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 boom. And then I remember hearing it like X months later, and it had all these harmonies and all these melodies on it. It had grown from just like this low chord progression to this huge opus.
The album finishes with Damage Incorporated, which starts with another composition of Cliff's, inspired by Bach's Come Sweet Death. The track then explodes into an ode to senseless destruction, leaving no hope or optimism. Master of Puppets was released on March 3rd, 1986. The album was mixed by Michael Wagner with a cover design painted by Don Brautigam, their first album recorded for and released on a major label. They hit the Billboard Top 30 alongside Whitney Houston, Dire Straits and Van Halen.
Yeah, being in top 30 is pretty surprising. It's great though.
Good place to be.
With a record of extreme progressive music written in the garage of their rented 2-bedroom house in El Cerrito. The band hit the road with Ozzy Osbourne, playing to sold-out arenas across the US before embarking on a headline European tour with Anthrax. Metallica were now an unstoppable force, achieving success in the mainstream industry without compromising their music, without a single music video, and with virtually no radio play. 4 guys from different walks of life, united by a love of new wave of British heavy metal, rock, punk, prog, and ambition. Honestly, for me, this was like the Sgt. Pepper of my generation. An absolute masterpiece. It completely changed the game. One of the best albums made by any band in any genre, ever.
I think Master of Puppets signifies for a lot of people, and it does for me as well, the pinnacle of the Cliff Burton era with Metallica.
obviously, but also it was still rebellious. Back then it was just still the four of us in a van out to conquer the world.
We knew we were onto something, you know, and we knew it was provocative, and we knew that it might not be accepted by anyone, but we were fully 1,000% committed to it, you know, every single note. And we had to be, really, we had to be.
It's hard for me to separate the record itself from the experience of writing the record and recording the record and everything that ensued, the life experiences and the tours and so on. And I understand, you know, to other people, it's like 8 songs that starts with the first note of Battery and ends with the end of Damage Incorporated.
Yeah.
And I just have a different relationship to this record. But obviously we were broadening our horizons, and I understand that for a lot of people, it's one of the primary and seminal moments of Metallica's career.
We don't expect anything. We just go out and do what we do and hope people like it and try and please ourselves artistically. And these are our goals. And we don't sit back and say, oh, I hope we're big next year, or I hope this, I hope that. We just go and do it and don't put a lot of thought into what might happen or what could happen. We just think about what's happening. We try not to think too much about the future.
WRTN Inertia, home of Midnight Metal. Of course, tonight dedicating the entire show to Cliff Burton of Metallica, who died early this Saturday morning in a tragic auto accident. The tour bus of Metallica, of course, going off the road during their tour in Sweden, and just a lot of people calling up who did not know of that, and there are, on the other hand, a lot of people saying that.
When I look back to that time in '86, not continuing never felt like it was an option. We, you know, when you're, I guess I was 22 at the time, I don't think you're capable of processing grief and loss at that level. The only option for us was to continue, and we were pretty sure, and I still am to this day, that obviously Cliff would have encouraged us. We were back up on our feet literally in 2 or 3 weeks, and we auditioned bass players and were back on stage touring in Japan 6 weeks later.
Just 49 days after that tragic accident on a freezing cold highway in Sweden, Metallica were back on stage in Japan with their new bassist, Jason Newsted, formerly of Phoenix thrash band Flotsam and Jetsam. Jason, at age 23, had suddenly found himself thrust into a role he could not have dreamt possible just weeks before.
You know, they asked me and I just, you know, I freaked, and it was like a dream come true. I looked up at these guys for a long time, and so it was really kind of unbelievable. You know, it's like going, what?
Here's the new right over here, Mr. Jason,
With Cliff's death, Metallica had lost a bandmate who they viewed as a musical equal and a mentor. With Jason, they suddenly had a Metallica fan in the band. In the throes of working off their grief, Jason's bandmates and crew were determined to knock that fan out of him.
I think it had to be extremely bittersweet for him. Like a dream come true, but I'm stepping into someone's shoes who can never be filled. It must have been very difficult. For him and for us, it was difficult. It just truly was.
I had only recorded the Garage Days thing with him, and that was other people's songs. And so we hadn't really done a thing where this is how Metallica does it in the studio. James and Lars get tapes. You know, you put your riffs on, your ideas on tape, and then those guys pull out and they take an idea, and try to build it into a blossom of some kind with our help once they've got the seed going.
Every song was a riff tape in itself, and we had so many riffs that we wanted to get them all in.
There was this kind of underlying thing about ability and about chops and about, what's Slayer doing and what's, Megadeth doing.
Wanting to show people that, yeah, we're a metal band, but we can actually play intricate stuff.
This was extremely detailed, very precise. We wanted to be as tight as
As Metallica were sharpening their chops, preparing to dazzle the world with their musical athleticism and dexterity, along came a record from a new band with a sound and style built on old-school swagger and attitude.
I see your sister in a Sunday dress.
Produced by Mike Clink, Guns N' Roses' Appetite for Destruction would become one of the biggest selling debut albums of all time, turning the rock world on its head.
The Guns N' Roses record had come out. It sounded like a band. It was like there was this sound thing happening, this attitude.
And with Flemming Rasmussen booked up in Denmark and expecting a newborn with his wife Pernille, Metallica were looking closer to home for a producer.
Then Mike Clink came in, and God bless him and his patience and so on. And what did that last? Maybe like a couple weeks, 3-4 weeks, something like that.
In the few weeks they spent together in the studio, Metallica and Clink did get some drum tracks recorded and also managed to lay down 2 more quick and dirty covers. Both would appear on the B-side of the Harvester of Sorrow single. Clink received an engineering credit, but both tracks were marked as not produced.
It didn't gel because I think primarily we just weren't ready to let somebody in yet.
Reflecting on this period, Clink said, "In the back of my mind I couldn't help feeling that maybe I had only been there as a placeholder until Flemming became available, and they could get back to something more familiar and comfortable."
Flemming came over and we were right back to what we knew.
What Metallica knew was a Danish producer with the tried and trusted expertise to record them the way they wanted to be heard, and who had the sense to stay out of their way when it came to songwriting and arrangements.
In the Flemming era, all the songs were 100%, 99.9% done by the time we started recording them.
But this time, the band wouldn't be recording in Copenhagen. Instead, Flemming would relocate to LA with his family, taking over where Clink left off at One on One Studios.
We worked for 4 or 5 months, like 14 hours a day. We would work hard to get the level of perfection we wanted. And that would also mean that we would record in bits. We'd get one good bit and then we'd punch in and continue from there. And that was tedious work because we wanted... Metallica in those days always wanted the level. I mean, if they were this good, they wanted the level up here. They would always kind of challenge themselves, and that's why they improved all the time.
As the musical arrangements reached new levels of complexity, the lyrical themes became grounded in real-world observations.
Apathy, their stepping stone, so unfeeling. Hidden deep animosity, so deceiving. Through your eyes their light burns, hoping to find Inquisition sinking you with prying minds.
On Ride the Lightning, there was a general theme about a lot of different stages and thoughts about death. On Puppets, it dealt a lot with manipulation, thought control, and things like that. And this album, the theme seems to be, honesty, justice, truth, stuff like that.
Very topical, but also there started to be a little more internal stuff showing up, not so much opinions, but my experience with it.
You're not telling people what to think or believe in, as same as the other albums. Just a statement opinion of ours, and people take it the way they want.
I think that we're careful because we don't want to be seen as a political band or anything like that. I mean, I don't want to be involved in any of that kind of stuff. We write about things that interest us. We have our own ideas and standpoints, but I don't think that we walk around and force them down other people's throats.
In tracking these complex pieces and aiming for as yet undiscovered levels of tightness, Flemming worked a lot in sessions with individual band members, focusing on getting the most precise takes.
And sometimes it would just be me and Lars doing the drums, and people would be more like, just in the studio with me. Everybody except me got time off.
After tracking the drums to a meticulously prepared click track, Flemming would edit the tape by hand, using a micrometer to mark the position of the tape where beats should land, and manually adding or removing tiny segments.
For each song and each tempo, I had made markers on the tape deck, so I knew that this was an eighth in the tempo. So if the snare was here, I knew I'd have to take out this much. Every time Lars was a little late, I would chuck out a piece of the tape. And every time he was a little early, I would take any odd piece from my envelope and just stick in.
For Jason, though, it was a far less hands-on experience.
I remember And Justice for All being chaotic, being confused. I recorded my stuff with Toby Wright, who was at that time the assistant engineer. But there wasn't the producer in the room or Flemming in the room with me or any of that. That was kind of on the fringes for me.
But working through the night, Jason recorded tight, aggressive, and precise performances. James's vocals, now strictly confined to within his limited range, were delivered with a brutal raspiness and placed high in the mix to give prominence to the lyrical themes. While Kirk's solos, still composed under the influence and guidance of his teacher, Joe Satriani, were recorded, as always, under the close scrutiny of Flemming and Lars. Both Kirk and James had by now signed endorsement deals with the ESP Guitar Company, adding to both players' growing guitar collections. The first 4 tracks of And Justice for All would once again follow the formula established on Ride the Lightning and continued with Master of Puppets. But this time, there'd be no acoustic intro, instead a multi-layered guitar piece played backwards. Here's how it originally sounded. This becomes yet another classic album opener, Blackened, the only track on the album co-written by Jason. The intense precision of the main riff sets the musical tone for the entire record. The song's lyrics, describing environmental decay and the extinction of the human race, establish a bleak vision that doesn't waver for the entirety of the album. And this is followed by an epic title track, this one clocking in at close to 10 minutes. Then, a mid-tempo banger. And a ballad.
I can't remember anything. Can't tell
To me, one it's like the ultimate darkness. It's the ultimate loneliness. The most lonely you could ever feel, really.
Darkness imprisoning me. All that I see, absolute horror.
Based on Dalton Trumbo's 1939 anti-war novel Johnny Got His Gun, One tells the story of a young soldier gravely injured in battle, isolated from the world and trapped within his own mind. It's gone on to become one of Metallica's most enduring and emotionally powerful classics. The Shortest Straw picks up the pace and deals with modern-day witch hunts.
The public eye's disgrace. He find commonplace on any paper tape on any.
Harvester of Sorrow delves into some of the darkest corners of the human psyche. And the frayed ends of Sanity pushes further into the realm of progressive metal. On Lightning, the epic instrumental was the closing track. On Puppets, it would be the penultimate track, and that would also be the case on Justice. Clocking in at close to 10 minutes, To Live Is to Die was based on a riff of Cliff's. And features a melancholic midsection. The album closes with the breakneck precision and confronting themes of Die As Eve, and with that, Justice was done. With recording completed, Metallica joined the Monsters of Rock US tour, headlined by Van Halen.
Earlier this year, we were in the studio for about 3 months, working on the new album. It's entitled And Justice for All. Should be out in about 3 weeks or so.
But with the new album still needing to be mixed, Lars and James would travel to the studio in between gigs to be present for the sessions.
Every day off, me and James have had to go up to Bearsville, which is about 3 hours north of New York, and mix. And so basically, it's been a lot of traveling and very little rest and so forth.
For decades, fans have speculated about the reasoning behind the unusual sound of the album, in particular, the conspicuous, almost absence of Jason Newsted's bass parts. Nearly 30 years after the album's release, The album's co-mixer, Steve Thompson, finally revealed exactly what happened.
So Lars comes in, and he walks in, he listens to it back a couple of seconds, he goes, he shakes his head, he says, "Stop tape." I said, "What's the problem?" "What happened to my drum sound?" Long story short, we had to get the drum sound the way he wanted. And I'm like, oh God, here we go. And he goes, "Okay, now the bass." I said, "Great part. All right, I want you to drop the bass level down in the mix where you barely audibly can hear it." I thought it was a joke. So I did that. And then they said, "All right, drop it down another 6 to 8 dB. I looked at Hetfield like this. I said, "Is this guy serious?" I understand. It's their record. It's not my record. But I was so pissed off the way this was sounding. I called up my managers and I said, "I love this band, but their direction I'm not going to be happy with. Find somebody else to do this record." And at the time, Cliff Bernstein and Peter Mensch were managing the band. They talked us into staying with it and everything like that. And I'm saying to myself, why are you doing this?
Once they had mixed and Justice for All, Lars came. Lars always comes and plays the album to me before it's released. And when he gets a nod, he's really happy. But when he came and played and Justice for All, I was like, what the is that? Because they'd taken the bass totally out. And I don't know why they did that, but it was Lars and James that did it.
It was always that sound. That was the sound of the band. Look at the original photographs, where it's just Lars with his drum kit and James, and they're both hanging on the flying V. It was them. That's always been the sound of the band. My take on it now as a fan, first, then in the band, now out again and trying to get the fans' perspective, step out of myself. Best garage duo ever. Best garage duo album ever.
And Justice for All was released on September 7, 1988. It reached number 6 on the Billboard chart, going on to become one of the biggest selling albums of the year. I ran to the store and bought this the day it came out. I took it to my friend's place. We stood there in front of the stereo. We were just in awe. Bass or no bass, this was the album of the moment in 1988. Metallica would spend the next 12 months touring the world, with hundreds of dates across North America, Europe, Japan, Australia, New Zealand, and South America. In 1989, they produced their first ever music video for the song One, and performed at the Grammys, the first metal band ever to do so.
So here to perform the song One from the Grammy-nominated album And Justice for All, Metallica!
The trilogy of albums produced by Flemming Rasmussen laid the foundation for everything that followed. Decades on, Ride the Lightning, Master of Puppets, and Justice for All are the albums being returned to by older fans and being discovered by younger ones. And a fortuitous twist of fate has led me to exactly the place I need to be to underscore this point. It's funny how life works out. I'm in the middle of editing this Metallica documentary, and then I get called out to shoot a video job out here in Olympic Park in Sydney. And you'll never guess who's playing a gig tonight. Metallica. All right, let's do this. Let's talk to some Metallica fans. What's your favourite Metallica album?
Ride the Lightning.
Ride the Lightning.
Ride the Lightning. Master of Puppets.
Ride the Lightning.
Ride the Lightning.
And Justice for All. I love One. It's my favourite. It's very emotional.
And Justice for All.
Why that one?
One. Yeah, One.
Justice for All.
Probably Ride the Lightning.
What's your favourite Metallica album?
Justice for All.
Probably Puppets. Hey, dude.
What's your favourite Metallica album?
Oh, Justice for All.
What's your favourite Metallica album?
It's got to be And Justice. Ride the Lightning, Master.
Ride the Lightning.
Yeah, why that one?
Because Ride the Lightning's on it.
Ride the Lightning.
What's your favourite Metallica album?
Puppets.
Puppets all the way.
All the way. Master of Puppets, of course.
Of course.
Of course.
Not
Number
actually
one.
any other answer.
Justice. Injustice.
I was about to say the same thing.
Master of Puppets, bro.
Of course.
Come on, man.
Hey.
Ride the Lightning. Justice.
Justice. Justice.
The story of how a band of uncompromising metalheads rose from San Francisco's underground thrash scene, sleeping on studio floors, living on the road, persevering through tragedy, and making their mark without music videos or airplay, and going on to become one of the biggest cultural forces of their era, is one of the greatest tales in the history of popular music.